Welcome to Ridgepoint, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have a whole bunch of people who gather with us live in the building on Sunday mornings, a big group that watches our live stream from home, and people like you who check out our archives later throughout the week. We just want you to know, wherever you are and whatever day it is, we are so grateful that you took time out of your day to be here. This summer, we're studying the New Testament book of Hebrews, and that series continues today as Pastor Brent leads us through a look at chapter 12. This is a powerful and encouraging chapter, so let's take a listen together as we kick off week 7 of Eyes on Jesus.
So these last couple of months, we've been making our way through some of the highlights in the New Testament book of Hebrews, and the big idea, keep your eyes on Jesus. Why? Because he's supreme over everyone and everything. So who better to lock your eyes onto than the best of all time, right? So we're in Hebrews chapter 12, the first 11 verses, and at the risk of giving you a chance or a reason to walk out early, here's everything I'm going to say, all right? So here's where we're going, and if you want to leave after this, we'll all just stare at you, okay? First one. These verses call us to follow in the footsteps of the great examples from the past. Whether they're people in the Bible or model followers of Jesus over the last 2,000, like choose somebody who did it well and walk in their footsteps. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing, we should fight against sin, and we'll keep hammering this, and through hardship. So sin is a bad deal. Temptation, you want to defeat it. You want to fight against it. But, hardship isn't always our enemy. Plus, we're not going to get rid of it. So let's fight through it, okay? I want to convince you of that. The third thing I want to convince you of is a mind shift that some of you need to make that understands that God will often discipline us, okay? But it is for our good. And so we need to welcome it. It's to refine our character and our faith. So that's where we're going today. Now let me try and convince you of these three things. Let's hit the footsteps, all right? Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 and 2 says, "Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses." These are all the characters in the Bible, okay? Since we have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us. Here it is, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that lay before him, that's us and our salvation, endured a cross and despised the shame and has sat down at the right hand of God. So verse 1 mentions this cloud of witnesses. These are the great examples of the faith-filled followers of Jesus in the Old Testament. Because the New Testament hadn't been fully put together at this time, right? So the Old Testament, that's the cloud of witnesses. Now, Hebrews 11, the chapter before this, has a fairly extensive list of people worth emulating, right? And their stories should inspire us. This cloud of witnesses should inspire us to walk in their footsteps. So I browsed through some of them, and I thought, man, I do want to follow in the footsteps of Abraham. Like, he left his home with one instruction from God: keep walking till I say stop. Like, he had no idea if he would walk for a day or 10 years. He had no idea of the destination. That's like bold faith. I want that kind of bold faith. I want to walk in the footsteps of Abraham. I want to walk in the footsteps of his wife, Sarah, who worked through her doubts. Do you have any doubts? I have doubts. We all have doubts. She worked through her doubts and chose to believe that God's promise of her bearing a child would happen at the age of 90. It did. Now, of course, I'm never going to have a kid, let alone at age 90, all right? But I want that kind of crazy, impossible faith. Like, who believes that? Who actually believes that God can help get a 90-year-old lady pregnant and give birth to a child? I want that crazy faith. Okay? I want to have the faith of Jacob, and I want to walk in his footsteps. Not all of them, because he was far from perfect, but when he was old and about to die, He blessed his sons. He blessed his kids. And then, catch this, old and weak as he was, he leaned on his staff and worshiped God in his dying breaths. Like, I want that kind of faith that will lead me to die like that, to bless my kids and to worship my God. I want to walk like that. Like, this is part of the cloud of witnesses for me. I want to walk in the footsteps of Gideon, who pushed through all his insecurities. I tell you, I have so many insecurities. And I just want to walk in his footsteps because he walked through them. Right? I want to walk in the humility of Moses. Yeah. And so we have all these cloud of witnesses. And then you and I probably have grandparents or friends or who have already dead or alive, but they are men and women who inspire you, and you want to say, I want to walk like that person in that way. The greatest example. Jesus, right? Like, Jesus is always the answer. They say Jesus is the Sunday school answer. Like, he's the one that we should walk in his footsteps. I mean, we choose which footsteps to walk in for people because not all their footsteps are right. But Jesus, he's the one. Every footstep was right. Want to hear a joke? There! You're a slow crowd. Yeah. So this one's way overused, but it was this Sunday school, kids' Sunday school class, and this teacher said, what's brown and furry and has a tail and climbs trees and eats acorns? And some kid raised his hand and says, I know the answer is Jesus, but it sure sounds like a squirrel to me, Like the Sunday school answer is Jesus. Like, who should we walk in the footsteps of? Yeah, the cloud of witnesses. But we lock our eyes on Jesus because he's the answer. He's always the answer. Like, he is the one where every footstep is worth us stepping into, okay? I was in an elevator with my youngest grandson, Braylon, this last week, and he's 1.5 years old. And so, of course, he wanted to press every button, which I let him do because that's the right thing, okay? But when we finally started going up the elevator, I took a step back, and I leaned against the wall, and I crossed my legs, and I just, they have that little banister, I rest my hands on it, and he's looking up at me, and he stumbles back a little, falls back. The banister's hitting him in the head. And then he tries to, I hope he gets more coordinated over time. But he tries to do that foot cross thing, and he can't, but he ends up stepping one foot on the other and just smiles at me. And I said, you want to be like Papa, right? Like, he's at the point where I am perfect, right? He'll figure out that's not true. But for now, that's what he thinks. And he says, wherever Papa goes, I go. Wherever he stands, I stand. He sits down, I do it. He walks left, I go left. He crosses legs, I'm going to do it too. See, follow in the footsteps. Okay, at the end, I'm going to give you a chance to do Jesus +1 +1 for following, and we'll get to that. Hey, we gotta move on. So the second thing these verses talk about in Hebrews 12 is we fight against sin, but we fight through hardship. So against sin. One of the most troubling verses in the Bible for me, Hebrews 12:4. He writes, in struggling against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. What? Like, what's that mean? It's got to mean something about waging a war against sin. It has something to do with jumping into the cage with sin, and it's an all-out fight, and you are not going to give up. Sin is going to bloody you, but you're going to fight until sin taps out. You're going to, like, there's a war that needs to be waged. I don't know how many fist fights you've won or lost in your life, but I've never lost one. This is deceiving. Just trust me. But I've never lost a fist fight because I've never been in a fist fight. I'm 100% win on that one, But there is something here about an all-out fight, okay? And this idea of to the point of shedding your blood. Scholars wonder if it alludes to a couple of things. One, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane is the night that he was arrested. And he is carrying an emotional, spiritual battle that none of us can understand, where he knows he's about to take on the sin of the world, and his father's called him to walk through the gruesome torture and execution on a cross. And sin is brought him into the cage. And he's in an all-out war against sin because everything in him wants to step out of the cage, tap out, and walk away from the cross. But he fought that to the degree in the garden where the blood pressure, the spiritual, the emotional fight inside of him, it worked. Some of his blood vessels burst and he bled through his skin. So scholars wonder if you might have put up a little fight, you shove your greed away. You shove your foul language away. You shove your whatever away. You put up a little fight, but you have not fought sin to the point of shedding your blood. The other thing that scholars say this alludes to, shedding your blood, is martyrdom. They say, okay, maybe you put up a fight, but would you keep fighting against sin if they had a sword at your neck or a gun at your head? Like, how willing are you to fight sin? And I read this verse and I think, man, there are a lot of days when I just don't care if I do sin. Like, I'm absolutely okay with that bad thought. It's not that I don't even put up a fight. I'm actually okay with that. I say, God, forgive me on that one. Because you, Jesus, put up a fight that led to your bleeding because you refused to be defeated by sin. And I'm okay with it? Come on. Jesus, I want to put up a fight. Put me in a cage. I will box and fight. I'll get bloodied, but I'm not going to be the one to tap out. You fight against sin. But then it's also you fight through hardship. Okay? Hardship, it should not be our goal to live a life without suffering. There's a depressing reality that is this. All of us are either walking out of a problem, we are in a problem, or we are walking into a problem. Like, don't you ever feel like you just want a problem-free day? Like, I'd like one day without any problems, all right? But this is like planet Earth where sin has corrupted every part of our existence and we got troubles. We're not going to get rid of them, and so we fight through them. We endure through them. So in verse 2, it says that Jesus endured a cross. He didn't eliminate the suffering. He endured through it. He endured hostility from sinners, all the rebuke and the persecution and the torture and the death. And then verse 7, we're called to endure suffering. Now, granted, we're not in Ukraine. None of you walked in here worried whether we were going to have a bomb dropped on us. But our problems are still real, and our problems are still heavy, and it still requires a grit, a determination to fight through them, remembering the cloud of witnesses that has walked this path before and they made it, remembering our grandmothers and our grandfathers and our mentors and our friends who have set the pace for us by enduring through suffering. And we look up to Jesus and we say, okay, eyes locked on you. You endured a cross for me. I'll endure my loneliness. I'll endure my depression. I will endure this financial mess. I will endure this relationship implosion. You endured to the suffering, and I will put up a fight to endure through my suffering as well. We got to move to the third thing. And that's this mind shift where we welcome God's discipline. Okay? So verses 7 through 11, these 5 verses mention the word discipline 6 times. And the word discipline, I'm going to tell you what it means before we read it, and then we're going to read these 5 verses. But it's like 3 steps. The Greek word for discipline here, it means instruction. So a parent will instruct their child. This is what you do in this situation, okay? Then a step up, this word also means correction, where it says, parent says, that's wrong, let me correct you, this is the right way. And then the third step is I don't like the word punish, but it's where he disciplines. He drops consequences on us, right? And every good parent, if they're good, and there are bad parents, they will instruct, they will correct, and they will drop consequences on their kids. Why? Never to shame them, but to help them become better human beings, better followers of Christ, more responsible people. Like, that's a good parent. Now, let's read what it says. Endure suffering. This is beginning with verse 11. Endure suffering as discipline. God is dealing with you as his children. For what child is there that a father, this is a good father, does not discipline? Bad fathers don't discipline their kids, or they discipline them poorly. But a good father disciplines children. But if you are without discipline, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. You're just spoiled brats. You look at kids who are raised in homes without boundaries, without instruction, correction, and the dropping of consequence. And they're just a mess, right? Furthermore, we had natural fathers who did their best to discipline us. Shouldn't we respect even more the Father of spirits and live? So God's the perfect parent, okay? For our human fathers, parents, disciplined us for a short time based on what they thought was good. But God does it for our benefit so that we can share in his holiness. And then this line that a lot of folks have heard, no discipline seems enjoyable at the time but painful. Later on, however, it yields the fruit of peace and righteousness. And most of us who weren't beaten with rods and, we crossed the line, but we were disciplined by our parents. We didn't enjoy it back then, but we look back and said that was good for us. Right? So every human parent has regrets. And I look at our teenagers over here, and I say, your parents, if they're honest with you, they got regrets over their parenting. We all do. Sometimes your parents are too soft on you and you need a little whooping, okay? Sometimes your parents are too hard on you. You need a little more grace. But all of us as parents, we rewind the tape and we have regrets. Joe and I have lots of regrets of our parenting. But there's only one parent who doesn't have any regret when he rewinds the tape, and that's our Father in heaven. And so he never makes a mistake when he instructs us or corrects us or drops consequences on us. And he's doing it for our good. Now the question is, how does he discipline us? Like, every kid knows when mom instructs or corrects or lowers the boom. You know, you're in the middle of the discipline. You know it. How do we recognize God disciplining us? So it's not really that complicated, but you need to listen. God instructs and corrects us through his parenting book. This is his parenting. This is his parenting book. So if you read the Bible, you will experience God instructing you and correcting you. Okay? God also instructs and corrects us by dropping thoughts into our minds and speaking through our conscience. So you will have a thought saying, I shouldn't have done that. Next time I need to do this. That's God correcting you. Why do you think that's your brilliant idea? No, why wouldn't you think that's God's idea? A few weeks ago I said that God put the Holy Spirit in us and he didn't put duct tape over his mouth. God put the Spirit in you to talk to you. And so don't assume that when your conscience speaks and you have I shouldn't have done, I need to do this, that instruction, correction is you. No, it's Jesus. Right? He's instructing. Now, how God instructs and corrects through other people, okay? But he also allows us to experience the consequences of our sin. He at times will allow us to get caught. We will be embarrassed. Our sin will go public. There will be a ripple effect of damage into other people's lives. He allows this. He's disciplining us. Why? Because he knows that that very likely may get your attention and help you become a better person, like a better follower. Okay? And we need to accept this mind shift and welcome this. All right. Well, that's all I got today. Now, if you want to take this sermon home with you, okay, and I know a bunch of people every week, they just leave the sermon here and walk out, okay? I'm aware of that. I'm aware that these doors are these magnetic doors that just erase the sermon when you walk out. I know that happens. But if you want to take this sermon home with you, here's 4 things. You know, 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of them, okay? Here's what you can do to take this sermon home. 1, choose to walk in the footsteps of Jesus plus 1 plus 1, okay? So choose one attribute of Jesus, and you may say, Jesus forgave, and this week I want to walk in the footsteps of Jesus when it comes to forgiveness. And you may decide that every morning you're going to say, God, bring on whatever you want to bring on, but whoever offends me, I've already decided I'm going to forgive them, so it's no big deal. Like you actually want to decide ahead of time that you're going to forgive anyone of anything, right? And that's what Jesus is. Okay, and then plus 1 plus 1. The plus 1 is Google famous Bible characters. Google's your friend. Just Google famous Bible characters and read through 10 or 15 or 20 characters, this cloud of witnesses, and choose one character to follow this week. For me, it's going to be Gideon. Gideon pushed through his insecurities. And I have a lot of insecurities. I want to walk in in Gideon's footsteps there. So choose Jesus plus 1 plus 1, okay? The third person is someone outside of the Bible, dead or alive, okay? And that could be a great-grandfather, some great saint from 400 years ago, or it can be a mentor in your life right now. But choose 1 plus 1 plus 1. Jesus plus 1 plus 1. All right? That's how you can take this sermon home. Okay, I'm going to combine number 2 and 3. You choose one hardship you choose one sin that you're going to fight against and one hardship that you're going to fight through. You can't fight an enemy you don't name. So name a sin. Your sin. And you would do well to name a sin that you keep stumbling over. And if it's greed, you say, okay, I'm going to name that sin and I'm going to get into a cage with it and I'm going to box till it taps out. It will mean I have to confess it out loud to another person. I need accountability. I need help. I'm going to have to work hard. I'm going to get beat and I'm going to bleed a little, but I will keep fighting. So you choose one sin in your life right now and you say, this week, that's what I'm just going to fight that baby. Okay, you choose one hardship, and you're going to endure through it. Is it loneliness? Is it depression? Is it the hardship of a health concern? Is it a kid of yours that you're estranged with? Is it anxiety? What's the hardship you're facing? And you say, Lord, I just want to endure through it. I don't expect always to like get rid of it, but I want to get through it, endure. And then the last thing is that mind shift where you welcome the instruction, the correction, and the consequences of a perfect parent who is trying to help you and me become better and better people. Okay? Let's pray. Again and again we say, Father, that you're better to us than we deserve. I pray that you would help us to navigate a very toxic environment in our world right now and to be the bride of Christ that is beautiful and courageous and holds to truth and holds to good behavior. I pray that you would help us to choose some people to walk in their footsteps. We don't want to waste the stories of the past. And so help us to walk well, to fight well, to accept your discipline in our lives. Again, you're so good to us, and we want to say thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks to Pastor Brent, and thanks again to you for joining us today. Quick reminder, along with these sermon videos and podcasts, we also live stream and record our entire worship services. So if you ever want to check out our full contemporary or classic services, you can find those on our website, ridgepointwichita.com, or by searching for us on YouTube. And hey, while you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a message. And before you go, we want you to know that we are always here for you. If you have any questions after today's message, or maybe you could use some prayer for whatever's going on in your life right now, we would be honored to talk with you. You can find email addresses for all of our staff members at ridgepointwichita.com/staff, or you can share prayer requests anytime by clicking the button right on our homepage, ridgepointwichita.com. If you're active on social media, you're welcome to send us a direct message there as well. We've got 1 week left in this series through Hebrews, so I hope we'll see you next time right here at Ridgepoint.